I have some hard truths to communicate. Regardless of who you are, how this is received, you may find yourself on either side of what I'm going to talk about. The person doing it, the person experiencing it, and many times it's a little bit of a blend of both. What am I talking about? Power. Perceived power. I'm careful about that word because for many of us, that's not a great word, right? We're said, reclaim your power, take your power back. Yet we've been the participant of a game of power over, when our natural way of going about is from a place of mutuality. But we tend to find ourselves dancing with partners, people, situations, friends, family, pet companions who are playing the power over game. When you are a person who chooses, whether apprehensively in resistance or out of confidence because you know it's your thing, to step into a place of power, whether you perceive it as power or not. It's important to be aware of something. I can already hear many people saying, rejecting, reacting, this doesn't apply to me, this is about them, I'm not doing that, and all of the initial things that are going to come up. But this type of message, that's exactly what it is about. This type of message is meant to be heard, listened to, and then to notice what comes up, the reactions, and then to sit there a little bit longer and work past those initial reactions, responses, projections, rejections, to see what lives beneath that. Because there is a truth that lives beneath that, a hard truth sometimes that lives beneath that, about the entire situation that it is pertaining to, okay? And what the situation that it's pertaining to is going to be different for each person. When I say a place of leadership, it's leadership in any capacity. It is teacher, healer, guide, influencer, healer, therapist, a guide, a teacher, whatever position that a person finds themselves in by choice, like I said, or resistance, or through confidence and intention, it does not matter. The point is, it is a position that has a perceived sense of power. Other people are going to look to you, to that person, and either their own insecurities are going to be triggered. They're going to not trust you until they do. Then they're going to trust you until they don't. They're going to defer to you to help them where they feel they can't be helped. They're going to see you as the source of knowledge and wisdom and life experience and credentials, and all of that is power. And many times, depending on that power can go to people's heads, you might say, or they might reject it out of altruism and their own wounding. Oh, I don't have that kind of power. I only have 100 followers on social media. I'm not power hungry. I'm not doing that. They're doing that. I see that in them, but I'm not doing that, right? I don't have any power. So that's the first thing I want to say, is to recognize that if you are someone who is in a position, regardless of the size or capacity of that position, there is a perceived sense of power. People are going to look to that, and you're doing them no good by rejecting, neglecting, avoiding the reality that you are in a position of perceived power. By rejecting and not acknowledging that you are in a position of power. The force is being left to do what it wants. You're a person in that position, their wounding in essence is running the show. What they reject is running the show. There is no direction or intention to it. It's not being harnessed in a good way. And therefore, it's destructive to self, to others. It's unsafe. It needs to learn to be harnessed, not controlled and stifled, but to learn to work with it, to dance with it in a safe way. There is one way of using that power that you know you have, that is taking advantage of people, consciously recognizing that you have the power and using it to benefit the self and not recognizing how it affects others, right? So power over dynamic, using power over people. You can say it's for their good. You can say it's for healing them. You can say it's to help them. You can say it's altruism. You can say it's all of those things. And maybe it is. Yet here's the thing. There is a goodness in the heart that knows that if we're going to be a person in a position of leadership, we have to recognize that we're in a position of leadership. We have to wield it in a integrous way, right? We have to be in integrity. To be in integrity is to recognize and honor that we are in a position of power and leadership, to recognize that we're there, whether we chose to be there or we ended up there, we're there, right? And that comes with it a responsibility to do our own work, whatever that means. And I think that's relative to whatever field someone has to be in. And of course, we see examples of this being misused all over every day, from every portal opening in space we could choose to look. Even within ourselves, we're going to find, if we choose to look, many ways that we too are not perfect and are not fully in integrity. This is why it's a practice and it requires work. And if we are someone who has chosen to go forward in whatever position we are, with power, with leadership, comes a responsibility. Someone who chose to go, for instance, on their healing path in life, who wants to help heal other people, it's their own healing process that created that desire to help other people in some way. Sometimes it's their own healing process, their own suffering, and sometimes it's a rejection of that. It's because they have suffered so much, they don't want to focus on themselves, they want to focus on everybody else. It's all of this, okay? And again, it's not that one's better or worse than the other, one's right or wrong. It's just this recognizing that this is all there. It's all existing on the same plate. The danger comes when a person in this position chooses, consciously or unconsciously, to stop doing the work. And I say unconsciously because we say, yeah, I'm open to learn. I'm doing the work. When we're dancing around the work, we're pretending to do the work. We're saying what sounds great and making it sound like we're doing the work. But the thing that requires the most work, we're totally avoiding. We're ignoring. We're shutting down. We're not opening ourselves to listen and ask for the advice, the feedback, and be willing to hear it from the people around us that might hold little pieces of that information. And when they do offer it, whether we ask for it or not, we reject it, push it away, we retaliate, we defend ourselves. That's not true, that's not me, I'm not doing that. Nope, that's not for me. It's them, I'm not doing that. Or yeah, I totally hear you, yeah, I'm doing that. But we don't, we're not. We don't get it, we don't absorb it. We react, we respond, we flitter around, and we just regurgitate the same stupid cycle over and over again. regardless of where you fall into what I'm talking about. Like I said, there's probably a little bit of both sides in there, okay? It's never just them or other, it's always both. And it doesn't have to look exactly the same, right? We can be a contributing party to whatever we're experiencing. How are we contributing to it? But anytime we start to project and look outside of ourselves, we have to also reflect, look and see what is being reflected, right? It might not be a mirror image. It might be a complementary energy or frequency that's allowing something to be there. Rejecting, stopping doing the work. Controlling the environment to a point where a person closes themselves down from teachers, guides, because they think they don't need them, because they're in fear or rejection of allowing themselves to learn, to be open to learn, to have a teacher or guide themselves, because they've been hurt by those people in the past. That's a dangerous place for a healer, a teacher, a guide, a leader to be in. A teacher knows that to teach, they always have to be learning, right? Of course, we can choose our teachers. I choose to no longer have abusive teachers, right? It's that simple. So if I have a teacher come into my life who is attempting to teach me a lesson in a abusive, horrible way, not for me, right? I'm choosing lessons that can be learned in a more loving, gentle, respectful, mutual way, right? No more power over type lessons. I'm done with that, right? So yeah, I reject that, right? Yet with that is deeper and deeper levels of wisdom and healing work regarding those lessons I chose to accept, right? It doesn't mean I need to continue to allow those type of teachers in my life, but there are layers of healing that I have to go through, deeper levels of wisdom I have to come into in order to be in a position of leadership, of guidance, in whatever capacity I stand, right? I can't cut it off and stop doing the work, because what happens is then that wound, that energy, what it is tied to, starts working through me. So in the name of other people, I'm then perpetuating the very thing I'm rejecting on my own path. I see this. There is something that came up regarding a connection with a person that I started realizing that I have entered into my old pattern of not being able to communicate effectively. The person is not asking for me for any questions or feedback. I have seen them act in total lack of regard and out of integrity regarding other people, yet claim and hold their position of authority while rejecting their own deep truth without recognizing how this is working through them and maintaining the position that it's them, not me. And when it comes up that there's work for them to do, they shut it down. Nope, that's not for me. I'm not going there. I'm not doing that. And they continue to protect their space, to protect themselves from the harm they received in the past, which I get, totally fine, but they're not actually working to heal the wound. They're just sweeping it under the rug, controlling, and meanwhile doing to others exactly what they complain about happened to them. That's the hard truth. They are naive and they are wounded, and they are not seeking help or allowing help from the right people that could actually help them learn and grow and move through and heal. Instead, they're in fear, they're in trauma brain, they're in rejection, and they pretend and make it sound like they're great and fine, or they're doing the work, or they're going through it, or they're doing this, but they're just stirring this pot and lying to themselves and a lot of other people, but instead they're simply making it look a certain way. This doesn't come from judgment or condemnation. That is not my place. I am observing it. I am aware of it. I don't know that it's accurate. I don't know what I'm actually observing. I just know that this is an experience that I'm feeling, and that's what I'm coming into awareness about. The question becomes, for those of us who are in positions of authority, power, leadership, how can we step into deeper levels of integrity? None of us are perfect. Are my relationships in integrity? How can I be more vulnerable by speaking my authentic truth, right? From that place. Like, if we've been out of integrity, it's to recognize, like, wow, I've been out of integrity. How am I going to clean it up and lead from that place? Authentic, integrous, truth. And sometimes that is hard, right? It's also to open ourselves up to learn, to be willing to learn. And that's not just some fancy thing to say, like, oh yeah, I'm super conscious, so I'm open to learn. But inside we're like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm going to reject everything and you're going to become the problem, right? So it's not that, but it is really to sometimes be willing to look at ourselves, and it's to honestly have elders and teachers around us and people around us who are not just going to be an echo chamber, confirming everything we say and boosting up our ego so we feel good. But we're going to have to open ourselves up to the people who have the hard truths. Am I doing this? What am I afraid to heal? What am I not healing? Am I been hurting people because I am rejecting my own healing? These are things that, as like people, leaders, need to pay attention to. Am I acting in integrity? That's really what it comes down to, that simple question. And then from there, it is about, being willing to be more vulnerable, to grow, to get the healing that we need, whatever that looks like, to self-correct our life, and recognize that if you're a person who is constructing your life in a way so that you shut down all of the openings where truth might come through, that's not a good place to be leading from. That's what I call a dangerous place to be leading from, because you're putting yourself in a bubble where it's only you, your wisdom, and whatever person you deem to be acceptable because they boost your ego, confirm your truth, without actually giving you the truth. That's the hard message. It's that simple. And it could create a lot of reaction to somebody to sit and observe in that way. So that is also part of this, in recognizing, if you are in a position of leadership and power, to recognize, when you're hearing this message, are you someone who's prone to be really hard on yourself? It's like possible you may need to hear the message and whatever the truth is for you, but in a loving, gentle, compassionate way, right? It doesn't mean reject the message, right? When I'm learning something about myself that is a hard truth for me to learn, to hear, to receive, it doesn't mean I reject it, push it away, think I'm a bad person for whatever it is. No, not at all. It means that I need to be aware of it, but I have to do it in a loving, gentle way. And that, I want to say, that's also not a self-soothing way, because we all have our little ways of creating a cushion, whether it's like, shopping, eating, socializing, relating, all the things that we kind of cushion our space up with, that diffuse whatever kind of like hard truth we need to hear about ourselves or other circumstance, people, place, thing, whatever it might be, right? So sometimes there really is a place where we need to come into the hard truth, the reality we need to say, to see, to know, to receive, to hear, observe, whatever sense, without doing it while soothing. There's a gentle way to receive these messages that is not indulging or soothing. It's important to know ourselves. So I say this because when we're looking at a hard truth, there is like the critical side of it that is like beating ourselves up, and then the indulgence or the soothing or whatever it is we do to cushion that kind of space. And all of that kind of detracts from the truth, right? So there is a point where we kind of have to strip it all away and be willing to, without judgment and without like beating ourselves up over it, recognize like, oh, like, yeah, I'm doing that. And like, that's what's there, right? And there could be emotion attached to it or whatnot, but we have to at least be open and willing to learn and see what we're actually doing. And it is layers, it is steps. It takes time to get there. It's like peeling an onion. One level of it, and then we're like, oh wow, okay, I just saw that about myself, right? And you learn something about yourself, and then in time there's another layer, and we can't control this, right? We can't force it. Like I've tried that too. We can't like try to tear it apart and make it happen and get to the core truth that's just gonna be the truth. No, it's a process, it's a practice, it's ongoing. So bringing this to full completion at this point, the reason for me saying this is because when we are someone that has found ourselves in, by choice or not, a position of leadership, again, as a teacher, a guide, an influencer, a notable person, a leader of any type, is to first recognize and accept that we are in that position, that that is the position we're in. We have to at least accept it, right? If we haven't been accepting, if it wasn't by choice, we found ourselves being in whatever position we're in, there comes a point where we have to say, okay, I may not have realized this is what my choice was, but now I see that I'm in it. So now I recognize that I did choose it to some level, and I'm going to come into full agreement with it. I'm no longer resisting it or rejecting it. I actually am recognizing that I'm in a position of leadership. And with that means that I'm also in a position of perceived power, and not everybody may be coming from a mutual position. Ask, am I coming from a true mutual position? Am I in integrity? Am I being authentic? How can I come into deeper levels of integrity? Where am I out of integrity? What am I rejecting? What am I protecting? And recognizing that those around you may be coming from varying degrees of wounding, of protection, of perceived power over dynamics, mutual dynamics. They may be expecting you to be mutual while you may be being in a power over. They may, give all their power to you, and you may be rejecting your own power. Problematic? Potential? Yes. That means that the person in the leadership position has to first embody where they are. Then is to take a good, honest look at the self from outside of the echo chamber you have built. And that means that there are people in your vicinity who are ready to speak the truth if you are ready to hear it. But that means that when you open it, you're ready to hear it. You're not going to condemn that person, blame them. You're not going to retaliate against them, throw poison darts at them. You're not going to blame them or anything. You'll just hear what they have to say and then ask yourself, is this true for me? Am I doing this? And then some time will pass. How am I part of this? It doesn't mean that it is true, but it does mean that to gain a deeper understanding of yourself, we have to be willing and open to allow ourselves to hear, receive another person's perspective. Their perspective may be wrong, false, skewed. Their perspective may not be accurate. It could be the perspective of, looking at the sunset from standing at the base of a building in a downtown area saying you can see the sunset. And it's like, well, in some level, yeah, but no, you can't see the sunset. Like the building is blocking your view. It's still a perspective though. That person's perspective can't be denied. It is still a perspective. This is how we get beyond our echo chamber, and this is how we get beyond limited perspective. And as a person in a position of leadership, this is really important. Because when we control the narrative, when we control the dynamic, and we put ourselves in a position of power while rejecting other perspectives and not opening to learn and really understand and hear what that perspective is and how we may or may not be contributing to it, we are not doing the good work. We are out of integrity, and we are what I call dangerous, right? So that's that. That's really that. It's a responsibility. And only those who are willing to accept the responsibility and do the work, which requires being open to learn, which requires, building a diverse network of people around who are willing to speak the message, who are willing to do that. That's helpful, right? But being in an echo chamber is not. Hard truth. I send this with love and all of the compassion, and be gentle on yourself if you are feeling like you're thinking, is this me? Is this talking about me? Am I doing this? Then just ask people. Ask for the people around you, not for their judgment of you, but for their experience of being around you. What is it like to be around me? What do you perceive me struggling with? If you could just tell me anything without fear of my reaction or my response or hurting me, or just if you could just speak freely, what have you been wanting to tell me that you haven't been able to say because you're afraid to hurt me, because you don't want to say anything, because you feel like you're making judgment of me? What is it? Ask those people around you, not the ones who are going to tell you, oh no, you're great, you're super awesome, I love you, I'm going to boost up your ego. Those are not the ones I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about the ones that are willing to communicate. And sometimes the communication is not positive because we've had rough dynamics with people, and you don't even need to communicate with those people. You can just reflect and think back about what were they saying to you. I'll share right before I finish this, I'll share this with you. My experience with my ex was all the colors of the rainbow, and probably even colors that don't exist in the rainbow. There was positive, but there were challenges to it as well. But some of it was regarding, messages and conversations, and there was a lot of verbal abuse and toxicity there. He used to tell me all the time when we get in these discussions, or I'd go on these long-winded conversations, and he would frequently interrupt me and tell me to land my plane. It is a communication style difference, because he wanted me to get to the point and just say it and just be matter of fact about it. And I was working it out in the process, right? Because that's how I communicate. So, but that was awful. I couldn't stand that. It drove me nuts every time he'd say land the plane. It just didn't work for me, but I get it actually now. So that's an example of I don't have to go strike up a conversation with him and ask him a bunch of questions. There's little things that I remember from that dynamic that, I used to retaliate against, that he would say, and I would, be no, he's verbally abusive, and go through the whole thing with it, and, condemn him or whatever, and, tell people, and then they would, oh yeah, right, understand me. And now when I look at it, it's actually helpful, because maybe not this video, because I'm definitely talking about a lot of things, but through it, I've been working on my speaking and slowing down and being more intentional and having it move towards a point, staying connected as it moves towards a particular point. And that is what I'm talking about. So land your plane used to be a very charged statement that was connected to a lot of rejection on my part, that the way I was communicating a message and the way that I was speaking was not right, you know? But the reality is it was confusing for him. He couldn't follow it, he couldn't track it. So it was his way of letting me know that. And now it's helping me guide my communication on most of my videos, on most of what I do. Maybe not so much this one, because again, this was more about the hard truth and putting it out there and having this message. And I think I did a good point of staying connected through it. And now I'm kind of rambling a little bit and going all over, but the reason why I'm doing it is because I wanted to give you an example of something that was a hard truth for me. Land your plane was a hard truth. The hard truth was, yes, I process while I talk. Yes, I feel like I am a good communicator, but no, frequently in those conversations did I really understand what I was attempting to communicate. And there was definitely something I needed to communicate that I was afraid to communicate. So he was not aware of what that was. I was afraid to say it. I was dancing around it in conversations, trying to be nice. And he was attempting to draw it out by saying, land your plane, right? Get it out, say what you need to say. But I was so afraid to do it. So now that has shifted. So that is my example of that. And I hope that the example translated well for you. I just don't want a bunch of people going out making contact with their toxic past, asking for like advice and feedback, because we don't actually have to go make the contact with them. So that was the reason I felt like it's kind of a cautionary statement. Don't actually do that. Just reflect, look at your journals, think about it. You know, if you talk to any friends at that time, talk to them about it, who are your safe people, who can say, yeah, I remember in that time, and you're like, oh yeah, right, I do remember that. That's more helpful than actually going and digging into like some of the other things. You know what I mean? Okay. And also, as always, for stuff like this, therapy is really good. I am not a therapist. I am a coach, and I can work with people with certain things. But when you're getting into your wounding and your core wounding, like for me, this is where therapy has been good, because that's what it's for. It's a good person to connect with, to have a conversation about what's coming up, what you're observing, what you're seeing in yourself, and understand what it is. That's what therapy is all about. So that's what I would say. If you listen to this and you think about it, then this might be guiding you into realizing that it's time to enter into therapy. And I personally do maybe have a little bit of a bias, because I do honestly believe that, especially, many leaders and therapists themselves and coaches and guides and healers do need to be working on their own healing. And they need to be actively working with, a therapist, depending on what it is, a coach. It's like continuing education. That's important as well, so that we're continually learning and growing and moving into new levels of being. Simultaneously, it is continual healing. So we are continually allowing ourselves to go through deeper and deeper levels of our healing. And there is also self-healing, yes. However, just like there is self-study, there also are times where we do need a teacher, and we do need a healer or a therapist. So I think that is important as a person of power and leadership, in order to be doing that work and engaged in a practice of healing, of learning. Okay, thank you for watching. And I hope this message receives you well, and it gave you something to look at for your life and to process, to come into a deeper level of integrity and truth, so that you may step into self-mastery and become a better leader, teacher, healer, guide, therapist, whatever type of position of leadership you are in. The purpose of this is so that you can become a more potent, a more integrous leader. Excellent. Thank you.